The office buzzed faintly with keyboards clacking and printers humming, but beneath that familiar rhythm was a quiet tension, heavy and full, like the stillness before a downpour. Stella sat at her desk, back straight, hands calm, posture elegant. She opened her laptop as though nothing in the world was amiss, as though her life had not pivoted dramatically within the last 24 hours. But she could feel the stares. Not aggressive. Not mocking. Not even curious. No, this time, they were afraid. Afraid of the mirror she had unintentionally held up to them. Afraid of the consequences of their own cruelty. Afraid that the woman they believed they could belittle was now connected to a man whose name carried power. Tonia shifted in her chair, her breath shallow. Her group clustered awkwardly around her desk, but the usual laughter was gone. It was remarkable how quickly confidence dissolved when the floor gave way under it. Stella typed steadily, her composure unshaken. But inside, her thoughts moved differently. They wound back to the cafe, the light across the table, the warmth of Daniel's voice once his performance dropped, the sincerity in his gaze when he admitted what he felt. "I won't forget tonight." She heard it again, echoing softly. She closed her eyes for a moment and reminded herself to breathe. She wasn't a woman given to fantasies. She believed in plans, structure, work, discipline. She didn't allow herself to imagine futures built on brief moments or dramatic revelations. But Daniel, he hadn't treated her like a conquest, or a challenge, or a spectacle. He had seen her. And that was harder to dismiss. Her phone buzzed softly. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. "Good morning, Stella. I hope your day started gently. D." A small, unexpected warmth moved through her chest. She didn't reply immediately. She inhaled slowly, centered herself, then typed. "Stella. Good morning, Daniel. It's unfolding as mornings do. And yours?" His response came almost instantly. "Daniel. Better now." Her lips curved, just barely. Before she could type again, a shadow fell over her desk. "Tonia." Her voice was careful, too careful, like someone tiptoeing across thin ice. "Stella, can we talk?" Stella looked up, expression calm, face unreadable. "Yes," she said simply. Tonia gestured toward the hallway. They walked together, heels on tile, doors humming shut behind them. The corridor was quiet and bright, lit by broad windows overlooking the street below. Tonia stopped, turning to face her. Her confidence had evaporated entirely. "Look. I'm sorry." Stella said nothing. Tonia swallowed. Her voice trembled in a way that might have earned sympathy if not for the history behind it. "It wasn't supposed to go like that. I don't know, I guess we thought you were always so composed and perfect and You wanted to see me break," Stella finished for her, voice soft but sharp as a blade slicing silk. Tonia's eyes glossed with something like embarrassment. "I didn't think he would be him. I didn't know." "That's not the part that matters," Stella replied. Tonia blinked, confused. "You're apologizing because it backfired," Stella continued. "Not because you realized it was wrong." Silence. Heavy, unkind silence. Stella didn't enjoy cruelty. She didn't even enjoy righteousness. But she believed in truth. "Here's what will happen," she said, her tone even, steady, almost kind. "We move forward from this. We continue to work as colleagues. You will not mention me, my personal life, or anything related to it in conversation, private or public. You will treat me with the same professionalism I've always extended to you." Tonia nodded slowly. "And more importantly," Stella added, her gaze deepening, "you will learn to live with the fact that trying to humiliate someone only reveals who you are, not who they are." Tonia lowered her head. Stella stepped back toward her office. But then she paused. "And one more thing," she said. Tonia looked up, hopeful, terrified, suspended. "You don't have to try to tear someone down in order to feel tall. You already have height. Use it. Then she walked away. Not triumphant. Not dramatic. Simply finished. When Stella returned to her desk, something in the room shifted. Respect, not loud, not declared, but present, like a change in gravity. But the day had only just begun. Around noon, the office phone on her desk rang. She picked it up. Stella speaking. "Good afternoon," a polished female voice replied, crisp, professional. "This is Lillian from Carter Tech Global. Mr. Carter would like to schedule a private meeting with you, at your convenience. Location and time of your preference." Stella exhaled slowly. "He would," she said softly. "Yes," Lillian replied. "He asked me to tell you," her voice warmed just a little, "no disguises this time." Stella's heart fluttered once. Only once. "Tomorrow evening," Stella replied. "The same cafe." "Confirmed. He'll be there." They ended the call. But her phone buzzed again immediately. "Daniel. I hope that wasn't too forward. I just wanted to see you again. Without walls." She stared at the words for a long moment. Then typed. "Stella. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. same cafe. No tests." His reply came after a pause long enough to prove he was thinking. "Daniel. No tests. Just us." She set her phone down gently. But life was not done twisting. Because just then, the elevator doors opened at the far end of the office and conversation died mid-sentence. Two men stepped out. Not the bodyguards. Not executives. Lawyers. Corporate lawyers, crisp suits, silver briefcases, expressions carved from marble. They walked straight to HR. Tonia's face went white. Someone whispered. "Someone's being investigated." Rumors swept like wildfire across dry grass. But Stella didn't turn. She didn't look. She didn't need to. Some storms unfold quietly. Some justice doesn't need to announce itself. She simply continued typing. The day moved. Hours folded into evening. The office thinned out. The sky dimmed to violet. Lights flickered on across the skyline. Stella walked home slowly, the early night breeze threading fingers through her hair. Her steps were unhurried. Her heart steady. She wasn't thinking about the prank anymore. She was thinking about who she would be tomorrow. About meeting Daniel, not the disguise, not the experiment, not the man pretending to be less than he was, but the real man. The man who had chosen honesty when deceit would have been easier. She reached her building. Took the elevator. Opened her door. Her apartment was quiet. Warm. Familiar. She placed Daniel's business card on the small table by the lamp, its gold letters glinting faintly in the dim light. She sat at the edge of her bed. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. Not for a fairy tale. Not for rescue. But for something real. Something earned. Something mutual. Something human. She exhaled, slow and deep. Tomorrow. Everything moved forward, starting tomorrow. The city moved with its usual rhythm the next evening, cars sliding through traffic like restless intentions, streetlights blooming gold against the dusk, and the faint hum of weekday exhaustion hanging in the air. But for Stella, time felt different. Slower in some moments, impossibly quick in others. Her day had unfolded in careful preparation, not of appearance, but of presence. She didn't dress to impress, she dressed to be unmistakably herself. A soft cream blouse, sleeves delicately cuffed. Charcoal trousers, sharply tailored. Hair pulled back, a few strands framing her face in quiet softness. Gold hoop earrings, simple, elegant. There was no perfume designed to intoxicate. No accessories chosen to lure. Only authenticity. At 5:52 p.m., she arrived at the cafe. The same ivy curled along the brick walls. The warm amber lights glowed from inside. The air carried the scent of roasted beans and soft pastries. The door chimed as she stepped in. But this time, she wasn't early. Daniel was already there. He stood as soon as he saw her, and the world seemed to steady around that single movement. No disguise. No slouch. No uncertainty. Tonight, he wasn't performing, and yet he was not imposing either. He wore a black button-down shirt, sleeves subtly rolled, the fabric fitting him with an ease that came not from labels or expense, but from confidence. His hair was brushed back, but not styled rigidly, just intentional. He looked real. Not a billionaire. Not a rumor. Not a test. Just Daniel. "Stella," he said softly. Her breath caught, not because of who he was, but because of how he said her name. Like it mattered. "Daniel," she replied. They took their seats. No cameras. No watchers. No performance. The cafe was quiet, the evening shading into intimacy. For a moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was recognition settling between them. Finally, Daniel exhaled. "I owe you a full truth," he said. Stella nodded. "I know." He looked down for a moment, gathering the words. "I wasn't always this," he gestured vaguely to the idea of himself, the success, the name, the presence. "There was a time when I had nothing. Not even hope. I grew up in a house where surviving the day was considered an accomplishment. I learned early that the world doesn't give, it takes. And people," his voice tightened, "people take more than anything." Stella listened, silent, steady. "So I built walls," he continued. "Not just around my life, but around my emotions. Around my identity. And when I started climbing, when success finally found me, or I found it, it came with a different kind of loneliness. People stopped seeing me. They only saw what I could provide. What I could elevate. What I could endorse. What I could fix." His hands tightened around his glass. "I wanted to know if anyone could look at me and see a person before they saw a name." Stella's gaze softened, not with pity, but with understanding. "So you created tests," she said. Daniel's jaw flexed. "Yes." She leaned back, thoughtful. "Testing honesty by beginning with deception," she murmured. "Not accusing. Just truth." His eyes closed briefly, the weight of it landing. "I know," he said quietly. "It wasn't fair. Not to you. Not to anyone." She didn't rush to forgive him. She didn't soothe him. She didn't diminish his accountability. She simply said, "I appreciate that you said it." Their eyes held. The silence was no longer heavy, it was clarity. Daniel inhaled slowly, then asked, "Will you allow me to know you? Not because of who I am. Not because of what happened. Just because we were two people who shared a moment neither expected?" Stella considered him. Not the wealth. Not the power. Not the story. Him. "Yes," she said. It was the simplest sentence she had spoken all week. And the truest. A small, grateful smile touched his lips. The waitress brought 2 cups of tea, jasmine for Stella, Earl Grey for Daniel. They hadn't ordered yet, but somehow, the cafe had learned to remember them. It was quiet for a while. Not out of hesitation, but comfort. Then Daniel spoke again. "What happened at your office today?" Stella traced a fingertip along the rim of her cup. "The consequences of cruelty have their own timing," she replied. He nodded as though he understood the full weight behind those words. "Do you want revenge?" he asked, not as provocation, but with genuine curiosity. "No," Stella answered. "Revenge requires me to linger where they are. I have no desire to stay there." Daniel stared at her long, deep, affected. "You are extraordinary." "I'm ordinary," Stella said gently. "I simply refuse to lose myself." "That," he replied, "is extraordinary." A soft warmth settled between them. Outside, the evening deepened into a velvet blue, the street lamps flickering like quiet promises. Cars hummed past, unaware of the significance unfolding behind the glass. Then Daniel leaned forward, voice lower, quieter, more vulnerable than before. "You changed something in me that night. I don't even know how to explain it." "You didn't expect kindness," she said. "No," he admitted. "Not without a cost." "I didn't give it to you for free," she replied. "I gave it because it was real. Real doesn't need to be bought." His expression shifted, something grateful, something aching, something hopeful. Then, the cafe lights flickered softly, dimming in their evening cycle. And for the first time, they smiled at the same time. Not polite. Not careful. But real. The conversation moved then easily, fluidly. They spoke of childhoods, of favorite books, of dreams that once seemed unreachable, of fears they still fought quietly. It was no confession of love, no grand romance. It was better. It was a beginning. Time dissolved around them, unnoticed. They didn't check their phones. They didn't glance at the door. They didn't remember the world outside. When the clock struck 9:14 p.m., the cafe lights grew softer still. The staff wiped down the counters. Night leaned fully into itself. They stood. Daniel walked with her outside. The air was cool. A streetlight cast a halo of gold around them. For a moment, neither moved. Then Daniel spoke, voice almost a whisper. "Stella, may I see you again?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Yes." They stood there, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth of each other's presence. A moment suspended. A moment that could become something. Finally, Daniel stepped back, not out of reluctance, but out of respect. "Good night, Stella." "Good night, Daniel." He walked toward the waiting car, not escorted, not surrounded, not guarded. Just him. She walked in the opposite direction. Their lives had not merged. But they had begun to align. And beginnings, after all, are where the real stories live. The city's pulse had shifted by the next morning. Light slanted across glass towers, spilling gold onto the streets, catching in puddles left from the overnight drizzle. Stella arrived at the office with her usual precision, heels clicking against the polished floor, laptop bag swung over her shoulder, posture impeccable. Yet, the air was different. The moment she stepped in, she sensed it, curiosity hung like mist, tinged with fear, hesitation, and something approaching awe. She had become, overnight, the center of an invisible orbit. Not because she sought it. Not because she demanded it. But because the universe had suddenly revealed her as untouchable in ways her colleagues couldn't yet process. Tonia wasn't the first to react. Chioma, the intern who had first leaked the message about Daniel's identity, stared from across the floor, mouth slightly open, her pen hovering midair as if committing a crime by writing. Another junior associate, Marcus, knocked over a coffee mug in nervous haste, hastily writing it, flushing red. Even Stella's manager, Marlo, paused in the middle of a conversation with a client on speakerphone, gripping the phone a little too tightly. She didn't acknowledge any of it. She didn't need to. Her desk was a fortress of quiet authority. Laptop open, calendar in view, emails organized, notifications muted. Efficiency radiated in every gesture. And yet, her mind wasn't entirely at work. Daniel. The thought arrived unbidden, sharp and strange, like a jolt through the bloodstream. She replayed the meeting, the casual honesty he had offered, the vulnerability he had shown, not in performance, but as a man who had allowed himself to be seen. The thought of him stepping back into his car, watching her until the distance claimed him, lingered like a soft echo. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Unknown number. "Morning, Stella. I hope your day begins kindly. D." She typed back deliberately. "Stella. Morning. So far, so quiet. How about yours?" A short pause. Then his reply. "Daniel. Better, but missing the conversation we started. Can we continue tonight?"
Perhaps somewhere private? Her pulse quickened. Not in panic. Not in anxiety. But in the subtle anticipation of something real. Stella. Yes. Later. I'll pick the place. The day passed in a blur of office routine, meetings, reports, and the constant hum of digital notifications. But beneath the mundane, Stella could feel the tremors of office politics shifting beneath her feet. The group that had attempted to humiliate her, the so-called office clique, was slowly shrinking back, retreating into whispered conversations and furtive glances. No one dared speak directly, and every attempt to act nonchalant betrayed tension. Tonia avoided her entirely. No snide comments, no rehearsed smiles, no whispered jokes meant to sting. She simply hovered at her desk like a ghost, unsure whether to vanish or speak, uncertain whether Stella would even acknowledge her existence. And Stella didn't. Chioma, emboldened by curiosity, dared a small smile as she passed Stella's desk with papers in hand. Good morning, Stella, she murmured. Good morning, Stella replied, voice even, warm without indulgence. Chioma's shoulders straightened, the relief almost palpable. And that was the measure of Stella's power, not intimidation, not wealth, not rumor, but the quiet, steady command of self-respect. Evening arrived, and the city had cooled, neon lights blooming against the indigo sky. Stella had chosen a small, private restaurant, this time intimate, unassuming, with low tables, dark wood, and flickering candlelight. She arrived slightly early, giving herself a moment to settle. Her heels clicked softly against the stone floor as she scanned the room. He was there. Not slouched. Not performing. Just Daniel. The crisp lines of his tailored jacket suggested a man aware of his presence without needing to assert it. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, genuine, unguarded, like a sunrise breaking through clouds. Stella, he said, rising to greet her. Daniel, she replied, settling into her seat. No conversation about appearances, no games, no illusions. Just a mutual acknowledgement of what had been and what could be. They ordered lightly grilled fish, fresh greens, quiet wines. And then they talked. This time, the conversation moved beyond explanations and confessions. It became a subtle exploration of boundaries, values, and the truths that most people avoided. I never ask for much, Stella said. But I expect honesty. That, I cannot compromise. He nodded. Nor should you. And I admire that about you. For hours, they spoke as equals, without pretense. He spoke of his childhood in careful strokes, of the way he had clawed his way through poverty and doubt. She spoke of the years spent building a career quietly, surviving the petty politics and shallow judgments. And then, inevitably, the topic shifted. Your colleagues, he said softly. They didn't expect you to endure what they planned. They underestimated you. They always do, she replied. But that is their story, not mine. Daniel leaned forward slightly, the candlelight catching in his eyes. And yet, you were still patient. Gracious. You could have reacted differently. And you didn't. Why? Because rage is cheap, she said. And power is subtle. I don't need to strike to be strong. He studied her, silent for a moment. Then, quietly. You've made me rethink everything about trust, about connection, about what it means to really see someone. Her lips curved faintly. Not flirtation. Not invitation. Just acknowledgement. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Not love. Not romance. Not yet. But the foundation, the rare, unspoken connection, was being laid. They left the restaurant separately, walking into the night with shadows stretching along the streets. Stella's steps were calm, her mind alive with thought, her heart quietly attentive. She was aware of the possibilities. Of danger. Of consequence. Of the fragile beginnings of something that could either flourish or falter. Daniel had asked her once more if she would meet him again. She had agreed. Not blindly. Not naively. But with intention. And that was all that mattered.
Her phone buzzed as she reached her apartment door.
Daniel. Thank you for tonight. For your time, your presence, and your honesty. It matters more than you know.
She set the phone down, silent, letting the words linger. In the quiet of her apartment, she allowed herself a small smile.
She didn't rush to interpret, didn't force expectations. She simply allowed reality to exist. Because some things, rare things, were worth patience. Worth observation. Worth integrity.
And Stella, for the first time in a long while, felt like the world was not trying to break her. It was merely waiting for her next move. And she was ready. The week following Stella's second meeting with Daniel passed like a measured storm, quiet in the morning, rising in tension by midday, and settling into an uneasy calm each night. The office, once a mundane rhythm of clicks, chatter, and gossip, had shifted. Whispers of Stella carried a new weight, one of respect, awe, and caution, tinged with something almost like fear. People had discovered that her dignity was more potent than ridicule, and they were wary of testing its limits. Stella moved through the space with the same effortless poise she always had. She reviewed campaign reports, drafted strategy proposals, and answered client emails with precision. But beneath the surface, she was aware of every glance, every pause in conversation, every shift in tone.
It wasn't paranoia, it was clarity.
She understood how power could be measured in small gestures, and she moved accordingly. Tonia, now more ghost than colleague, tried in vain to regain footing.
Stella didn't acknowledge her presence, except with the occasional nod when necessary. Chioma had grown bolder, daring to offer insights during meetings. She wasn't yet a confidant, but she was learning that loyalty and sincerity often outweighed gossip.
And Daniel lingered in the corners of her mind, not intrusively, but insistently.
Thursday evening arrived.
The city was a mosaic of glowing streetlights and honking cars, the air scented with rain-soaked asphalt and exhaust. Stella had agreed to meet Daniel again, this time at a loft he rented in the heart of the city, modern, minimalistic, open, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the skyline. She arrived promptly, dressed simply in a tailored ivory blouse and a pleated skirt that allowed freedom of movement. No jewelry beyond a thin gold bracelet. Her hair was pulled back loosely, revealing the curve of her neck, elegant yet unassuming.
Daniel opened the door before she could knock.
"Stella," he said, his voice softer than she remembered, but still carrying that weight of warmth and awareness.
"Daniel," she replied, stepping in.
The apartment was quiet, almost hushed. Light spilled in from the windows, reflecting off polished hardwood floors. Minimalist furniture, thoughtful accents, and the faint scent of fresh linen suggested a life curated for peace, not ostentation. He gestured toward the couch.
"Make yourself comfortable. Can I get you anything?"
"Tea, please," she said. He moved gracefully to the kitchen, preparing it with quiet attention.
She watched him. Not because she needed to inspect, but because she was curious. Not about wealth, not about influence, but about the man.
The one who had allowed himself to be vulnerable before her, without ego or calculation. When he returned with tea, he sat beside her rather than across, a subtle gesture that erased barriers without demanding intimacy.
For a while, they didn't speak.
The city hummed below, a soft, distant orchestra. They sipped tea, each thoughtful, each attuned to the other's presence. Then Daniel broke the silence.
"You've been thinking about them, haven't you?" She raised an eyebrow. "About who?" "The office. The people who tried to humiliate you." Stella set her cup down carefully. "I think about everything. But I don't dwell on things I cannot change."
He nodded, considering her words.
"I admire that.
Most people, most women, men, they react. They fight, or they flee. You observe. You adapt. And in that, you're untouchable." She smiled faintly.
"Observing doesn't mean forgiving.
It just means choosing your battles wisely."
His gaze lingered. "You've chosen well."
The conversation drifted naturally from past struggles to present ambitions. Stella spoke about her career, the campaign she was spearheading, her vision for meaningful branding that elevated small businesses without compromising authenticity.
Daniel listened, genuinely interested, occasionally offering insights from his own experience without overshadowing her. At one point, he leaned back, arms resting loosely on the couch. "You know," he said, "most people are intimidated by honesty.
Especially honesty paired with competence."
"Then they should learn to be intimidated," Stella replied evenly.
"No," he corrected softly.
"They should learn to respect it. Because intimidation fades. Respect endures." The statement hung between them, heavier than either intended.
It was not a flirtation, not a challenge, but a subtle acknowledgement that trust, admiration, and influence could grow quietly, carefully, even in the absence of overt power.
Later, as night fully embraced the city, Stella stood near the window, watching lights flicker across the skyline. Daniel joined her silently. Neither spoke at first. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he said finally. "And you're different from anyone I've ever met," she replied. A pause. He looked down at her hand resting lightly on the windowsill.
"I don't think I've ever been able to be completely myself with anyone before.
Not like this.
Not with someone who sees me without expectation."
"Then perhaps it's a rare gift," she said.
"Yes," he said quietly.
"It is." And in that moment, the city outside ceased to matter.
The noise, the people, the prying eyes, all irrelevant. Only the quiet understanding that had developed between them was real.
But even in the midst of this clarity, shadows lingered. The office clique had not disappeared entirely.
Rumors circulated subtly, attempts to regain leverage through whispers and indirect manipulation.
Stella was aware, as always. She didn't need to confront them yet, their own missteps were unraveling them more effectively than any action she could take. Still, she made a mental note: patience was a weapon.
Discretion, a shield. And integrity, a force more potent than any calculated scheme.
The evening drew to a close. Daniel escorted her to the door, walking beside her with an ease that suggested mutual respect.
The streets were quiet, the cool night air brushing against their cheeks.
"Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" he asked. "For seeing me," she said.
He smiled, a mixture of humility and warmth.
"And thank you for allowing it." They paused. Neither lingered, yet neither withdrew fully.
A shared understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that this connection was deliberate, intentional, and significant.
"Until next time," Daniel said, voice low.
"Until next time," she echoed. Back in her apartment, Stella placed her keys on the table. The faint scent of jasmine from her tea lingered.
She didn't sit immediately.
She remained standing, eyes closed, breathing in the stillness. The world outside had not changed.
The office still held whispers, strategies, petty rivalries. But Stella had changed. She understood now that power was not simply about position or influence, it was about presence, integrity, and the ability to remain unshaken. And for the first time, she allowed herself to feel not fear, not anticipation, but potential. The potential of choices made wisely. Of alliances built carefully. Of trust extended selectively. Daniel had opened a door.
She had stepped inside, not recklessly, not naively, but with awareness.
And as she finally sank into her chair, a single thought lingered, persistent and thrilling.
Some beginnings are quiet, yet they hold the capacity to overturn everything. And Stella knew, in the marrow of her bones, that this was only the beginning.